primary keys, secondary keys, and before you know it, you are opening a whole can of worms. Now let me explain what I mean with that. This is from a project a while back for an Odoo partner. They gave me a customer CSV file. I'm sure you've all been there. And the task was to import it. So I had to go into Odoo, I had to export my countries and companies and everything, so I would get the primary keys, then import everything into Excel, do my manual transformations, and I would use VLOOKUP to resolve the foreign keys. Oh, by the way, I just heard that VLOOKUP is not stable in Excel for large files. Anyway, you export it, you've got an intermediate file, you import it into Odoo. There's many manual steps, and to me that feels like picking up the hammer, but not to drive in a nail, but to hit myself on the thumb. And this is development, and then of course there's QA, UAT, production, and every time, if you make a small mistake, you're not going to find out until the end. You have to do it all over again, or even worse, you're not finding out, and you have corrupt data. So, there had to be a better way. I asked around. What they did for another project, they developed their own custom Python code. Looked like a great decision at the time because you then skip the manual steps. 1,000 development hours later, the profit evaporated, they still weren't done. So they also looked at other things like DBT. Again, you end up with complex scripts. And complexity is a problem. It's expensive to make, it's hard to maintain, and most likely there will be bugs. So when they asked themselves, how are we going to improve our competitiveness, they realized that also this is not the answer. So I sat dreaming, thinking, now what would be the answer? What would be the answer to save really the 80% of time and risk on my data migration? And I said it has to be simple to configure. It has to with a simple declarative language. Also, I want to be able to execute it with a single click, so that I can redo this on my other environments, other projects, and it has to be powerful. It has to take care of my foreign keys, it has to perform data transformations, and it has also to do the exotic stuff like the Odoo external ID and custom Python code. Now then, of course, I want it to be versatile. I want to be able to run it directly from my spreadsheet. I want a command line. I want to be able to integrate it using an API or a library. And then, of course, I want it to be an open standard. I want it to be open source because, hey, all successful standards are open source. And this is the picture I had in mind. What I really want is a simple language to express my table mappings, STML. The other thing that I need, of course, is a reference implementation, open source, the software that is going to parse my STML, and then take that customer file and in one click import or export, can go both ways, my data. All right, now what would STML look like? Here's a quick example. I can just declare a column name like phone. I can say that email is my unique field. I can express foreign key relationships for country, for example. I can nest them. I can set default values, do transformations, and a lot more, even do nested external Odoo external IDs. But hey, this is not a course into STML. This would be so much better to see in action. So I'm going to demonstrate, let me put this hammer away, that's too dangerous. I am going to demonstrate two scenarios. One is the hard work, I'm going to show data provisioning. Then I'm going to show the nice user interface with data migration. And I'll start with data provisioning using the Stimula command line client. Now here I have a fresh build. I just talked to the Odoo SH people to see if I can get it on Odoo 18. They put it on Odoo SH about 30 minutes ago, so that was too risky. This is still 17, but it's a clean build. And my task is now I want to provision my clean build with, let's say, 10 companies and 10 users, and I want to be able to do this with simple CSV files in a single click. So let me see how that goes. Let me show you how that goes. Here I have the Stimula command line. let's see what version I have. I've got version 1.1, great. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to connect to Odoo by its URL, and I'm going to do so with my user that I just created, STML. It's going to ask me for a password. All right, so now I am connected to Odoo, and I can, for example, see what is in there. So let me list the tables that look like users. Here you go. It's got 5 tables. It shows me the number of rows in there, so that already gives me a nice view of the data that's in there. Now let's have a look at one of the tables. This is the get command. Let me get the data from the res users table and then display that in CSV lens for a nice layout. All right, so here I see the data as a CSV. Looks familiar, and you see the header. Here you see STML in action. There's a login, and it has recognized that that's a unique field to identify the records by. For company ID, you don't see foreign keys because it's resolving them with company name. Now, what if I would? Now, if I want to provision data, of course I have to prepare my CSV files. Let's have a look at them. I created a few in my face folder. I created companies, partners, users, and a relationship between them. Let's have a quick look at one of them. Face. Let's have a look at the res users again. Now, very similar to what we just saw. Basically, I just added in the CSV file additional rows for my 10 users. Great. Now, what does it look like to post this to Odoo? That will be the post, and I'm going to tell it which files to post. And now these 4 files, they all have interdependencies. Like company depends on partner, and so on and so on. How do I make sure I import them in the right order? Well, simple. I let Stimula take care of that. I'm going to tell it to do inserts, updates, and deletes. All right, let's go ahead. So it's posting the files, and it's telling me it has read 70 rows, 50 operations, and if I want to actually commit them, this is test mode, I have to specify -c. So let's do that. Now, let's take a second. Before I'm posting to the database, of course I want to make sure that this is auditable. I want a audit trail, and I can do so with the -a option. And if I pipe that to less, then what you'll see, it has committed to Odoo, and it has created a audit trail for me. It's telling me when, it's telling me who, it's telling me what it has done, it's telling me the files with their size and their MD5 hashes, and down below I can find all the queries and their parameters. Now let's have a quick look at Odoo. So here in the context I'm seeing the companies and the users it had just created. If I refresh my screen, I will see the company list here. So very simple way to provision my data. And then of course, if I want to be there with, remember the hammer and the screwdriver, so I want to be able to revert what I just did. Now, before this, I created a little a file with the folders from before the interface, from before the import, and if I then import, update, delete, and commit, then it has read those rows and it has reverted to the state from before the import that I did. So I'm going back to Odoo, and I see my company's users have gone. So what I showed you was a very simple way with just CSV files, a single click, I can provision data in a very, well, cost-free and safe way. The second scenario I would like to show you. This is data migration using the Stimula add-on for Google Sheets. Again, so I'm here in Google, in Odoo, and what I now want to do is I get this customer's CSV file, and I want to save 80% on my data migration, so I want to do this in with a simple language, with a single click, without intermediary files. And I'm going to show you how to do that with in Google Sheets. So here I've imported the customers file into Google Sheets. And what I could do now is I can go into these headers and I can replace them with the STML statements that take care of my transformations, my filtering, my mapping, etc. And once I've done that, I can import this in one single go. But let me show you how to make this even easier. So I'm going to open the Stimula add-on. We're going to import today. And very similar to what I did just now, I'm going to enter the Odoo URL, the user, I'm going to log in. So now I am connected to Odoo. I'm going to show you how to simplify this in 2 steps. First step, remember this file is a file, I may get a new one tomorrow and I don't want to modify it again and again every day. I want to put the import in a separate recipe. Now the recipe is going to be the STML sheet. Now this is a simple way to make the STML sheet. It's going to take your data, pre-fill it with the source, a place to put the target, the source columns, here a place for the target columns, and a row of data for my reference when I fill out the target columns. Now filling out the target columns, those are the STML statements. That's not hard to do. STML is simple, and with a little bit of knowledge of your data model, you can easily do this. But this is where step 2 comes in. So we have provided this functionality with the default mapping. And these are not just templates. What it does it looks at the columns in your source data, it looks at your data model, it does some crunching, and it comes up with recommendations for you of how to import your file. So here it said, this looks like a NetSuite customer file, and you can import it as your Odoo, as Odoo context. So let me update the STML sheet, and it's now filling out my file with default statements. Great. Let me do this again for, let's say, the delivery addresses. Updating the sheet as well. And once that's done, I'm going to create a third STML sheet. And again, I'm going to use the default, this time for invoices. And when I update, by the way, what you see here is it is now using the billing columns to fill my addresses in Odoo. And I'm sure you know, they all go into the same table. They all go into the REST partner table, and they have dependencies. Now I can go ahead and import these. Same question. Since there are dependencies, how do I choose the right order? And I'm sure you're familiar with this. You may have a dozen of tabs, or maybe 24 tabs open, and you have to really know the order in which to import them. How do we do that with Stimula? We just select everything and let Stimula take care of it. All right, I'm going to do inserts, updates, and deletes, and let me hit test. Now, when you run a test, you want good feedback. And since we have a spreadsheet open, we can give direct feedback. Yellow lines, success. Red lines, no success. So here in the notes, I can actually see the queries. It would run if I would commit this. The queries, the parameters, and here when there's a failure, I can learn more about the actual error that it encountered. All right, so now I go ahead, maybe I call my customer to fix the data, maybe I need to transform it myself. Once I've done that, I can hit import and I've got my data. But remember, data migration is always a highly iterative process. You have your custom fields, your customer may send customized data. So what do I do if I have a new field come in and I want to map that to my Odoo model? So let's give an example of that. Remember, this is HTML. It is simple. Imagine I've got here salon name and I wanted to put that in, well, I've got a default model, so I have to choose a field that is already existing. let's say we want to put this into the comments field. This is really all I need to do. I've added a new mapping. I can now go ahead and hit import. So it's now importing these files. When it's successful, it's colored those rows green. When not successful, they're red. And again, of course, I can learn more about the queries and the errors in the notes. Let's have a quick look at Odoo, make sure I've got my data there. Here you go, this looks like delivery addresses and invoice addresses. Let's have a look at the contact. So here I've got a contact. You see delivery and invoice addresses are there. Quick look, yep, they're in good shape. And then what is remaining to show is that custom field from my import that I had to add, and that is right here. It's a little small, I see. Let me zoom in a little bit. Anyway, here in the Commons internal notes, you can see that data as well. So what I've demonstrated is that with a very simple configuration, with a single click, no intermediate files, I can migrate my data and easily save 80% on cost and risk. All right, now if you want to get started with this, the module is available on the App Store. On 17, it will be available for 18 very soon. And of course, we are here for you. We deliver support on our software. We have training material. We have a number of premium features, and we are here with consultancy to help you in your projects. Now, feel free to contact us. You can find us at STML.io. Also, there is we have a startup booth in the village tomorrow with another presentation. And if you have any questions for now, here's the QR code for the pad, and I'd be happy to stay on for a couple minutes to help you out with any remaining questions. Are you my moderator?
I'm gonna be your moderator.
Thank you so much.
Let's see.
Can I help you pick out an easy question?
Sure.
I'll just grab the first question. Who is your intended audience? Great question. I haven't really touched on that. I think I do have a slide on that. Yeah, I think this is a good one. So this is a slide with a number of scenarios that you can think of. Now, we just looked at provisioning and data migration. They were sort of in the technical field. But obviously, this is very useful for operations, for data analysis as well, and even for reporting in a business domain. As I heard Fabien say this morning, who doesn't like spreadsheets? You can use this to easily export any data. It can be Odoo, it can be other applications into your spreadsheets. And if you have someone provide you with the STML, you can even use it to safely import data into your Odoo database.
The next question is, does it support community?
Does it support community? Yeah, this is a free. It's open source. You can download it from the App Store. Oh, hang on. No, you're right. I see what you mean. Yeah. So for now, it's a module. You need to install the module. In Q1, we will come out with a version that talks to the API. And I believe the community is open has an API open. Good question, good question.
Okay. And which Odoo version supports?
Right, so we came out on 17. If there's any question for a back port to earlier versions, I'm sure we can make that work. And 18, I'll be able to demonstrate it tomorrow. I found the guys at Odoo SH happy to help me out with it. I got a little nervous doing this 30 minutes ahead of time.
That is great. Is this by passing Odoo ORM? I don't know if it refers to, I don't know if it's CRM or ORM.
Right, no,
ORM,
good question, good question. Yeah, so today this is bypassing ORM, which is great for, in many circumstances, which is great, for example, for master data. Now for more transactional data, we will talk to the API. Many of the things will remain the same. The export, comparing the data, committing data back will be the same. Just instead of writing SQL, we will be talking to the Odoo API.
Great. The next question is, can I import product variants and images with STML?
Yep, great question. So I'd be happy to demonstrate importing product templates and product variants. That is working. There's the dependency that it resolves. That's no problem. Images is following up in our roadmap very soon.
Do you have any few examples of premium features?
Right. Yeah, so I'll give you one example, the one that you just saw, where it fills out the default STML for you. That is currently a premium feature.
Okay. Can you import subscriptions?
Can you import
subscriptions?
I need some help with what kind of subscriptions we mean here. So maybe if the person, please come and see me, or add some additional information to the question so I can better understand it. Thank you. Okay.
How many lines can I import in one run?
Right. Yeah. Good question. So currently, with the add-on for Google Sheets, 100K is fine. After that, Google Sheet gets a little bit too much overhead, so I don't recommend it. Then the command line currently is only limited by, because it's talking to the API, it's basically limited by the by the timeout of the connection. We're working on sharding it, so at that time there's no limit. You can upload any file size, and I'm sure there will be a limit somewhere in the 100 million. But yeah, up until then, no.
And how do you deal with customizations in the database?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, so remember that one example I showed where the customer has sent in customized data. So there was a field that the default doesn't recognize, the salon name. Now imagine you have customized your data model, then you have the same thing on the target column. So again, instead of comment, you would probably fill out salon name or whatever you've customized in your model, and that is, again, all you need to do.
Okay, and is it effective with data import of stock, for example, cost, valuation layers, etc.?
Right, yeah, so for master data, this is great. For some types of transactional data, it will be better to talk to the Odoo API, so you have the triggers and the calculations at the back. So that is coming up in Q1.
And does STML works with SAS?
With SAS, so yeah, so there are a few ways to deploy. You can deploy it locally, test it on your own environment. You can deploy it on Odoo SH. My demonstration was on Odoo SH. And you can deploy this on your own hosting platform. The sources are available. Okay.
I have a big take in BigQuery. Okay. Can STML help in importing this table to Odoo?
All right, and this is big data?
So I have a big take. I don't know if it's a big take. Sorry for sometimes the spelling is a bit. So I have a big take. A table.
Big table.
Okay, a big table. Thank you for correcting. A big table in BigQuery. Can STML help in importing this table to Odoo?
So I don't know. Some people don't like that answer. No, I'm confident we can do it. Please come and see me, and I'd love to understand what the challenges are. Yeah, let me happy to show you how to do it.
How can I integrate the Stimula into Google Drive?
Into Google Drive. Right. That's a very interesting question. So today there is still one manual step, right? I've got my file in Google Drive, I open it in Google Sheets and I click import. But that's maybe not integration. Now, the part what does exist, if you look at the command line that I was showing, that can actually connect to Google Drive, fetch the data and import it without manual interference. So I believe for Google Sheets that is supported, I assume that would mean that it also works for Google Drive, but we can have a look at it. I think that would be the way. The integration part is then a client that sits remote from Google Drive, fetches the data, and uploads it into Odoo or any application.
I have a big question here. I got an external ID of the client that is not the external ID of Odoo, like an external accounting ID.
Okay.
Can I import based on this ID? That's just a field in Odoo. I want to import my accounting info based on this external ID of the client.
Yeah, of course, it's always, that's why I mentioned it, external ID. That is the way, in the Odoo world, you've got IDs and external IDs. If you can't deal with those, then... So, actually the demonstration I gave, that takes the external ID, it's called internal ID in the import file I have, but it doesn't matter. It takes that, it puts that in the Odoo external ID, which is great, because if you then use any of the other processes you have that are based on the external ID, they will work. Now also, when I imported the context and then also the invoice addresses and the delivery addresses, they were using the external ID to map it back to the contact. That's a great question. I know, that's very important to have right in Odoo.
I'm going to make the last question, and I think the rest will need to come and ask you directly.
Okay, sure.
So is it possible to automatically export different apps, like contact sales, invoices, for a blackout ransomware backup plan?
For a ransomware, oh, right. Yeah, so that's a very interesting domain. If you want to create backups, then there may be better tools than this. Yes, you can export the data, and you can do it in CSVs in a format that you can use elsewhere, that you can, and I'm sure with many advantages. So, yeah, for backup there are many other solutions as well, and this may have a number of advantages. Happy to talk about those as well.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anna. All right, thank you. Hope to see you. Please come and see me. We're also at the Startup Village tomorrow. Looking forward to seeing you there. Thank you so much.